So I don't know if you guys recognize where I am sitting right now. It is the inside of Yabá. Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm MP. And we just bought a boat that needs a little bit of work done.
We are both rookies when it comes to boat ownership and carpentry, so this is going to be a steep learning curve.
Luckily, we found an amazing team of shipwrights who accepted the mission of bringing our boat back to life and are now rebuilding Yabá with hand tools, ancient knowledge and a lot of passion.
Join us on this thrilling journey and wish us luck. So there is something that we started a long time ago, and that was taking down the inside of the boat. So like all the walls, the columns, the floors, the floor beams and so on. We couldn't take down any more because we needed to wait for some columns to be built so we could support the roof. Now we have got 5 columns, 4 or 5 on each side, doesn't matter, we've got support, so now we can continue taking out the inside. And why are we doing this now, even though it's not in the chronological order of building a boat? We are waiting for wood to arrive for the deck, for these cabezos, for the cover board, for a lot of things. And instead of waiting and doing nothing, we're going to start taking out the inside, and you might hear that hammering already. That's the sound of more destruction. But we do have wood to make the floor beams, and we do have wood to make inside columns, and that's what we're going to start working on right now. Of course, if the wood arrives sooner than the interior is finished, which of course probably will be, we are going to continue building the rest of the boat and then later come back to the interior. So it might be a bit chaotic for you guys, but this is just the reality of how this boat build is going. So let's get into it and start breaking a bit more. Couldn't save much of the rest of the bulkheads inside because they were either all glued together, especially where the wardrobe was, or it was just rotten, so that was mainly just cut out. Now it's all gone. Look how spacious this is, it's amazing. We are going to use this moment to be able to drill a few more holes through the keelson down to the keel to hold the keel on, as there's so much space and accessibility above the keelson, and we can start plumbing it all out, as in like measuring where the floor will have to be, so we can start putting the floor beams down and then start building the walls and columns on top of them. So from now on, this is the emptiest you will see the interior, and bit by bit now it is going to look more and more like a livable area, including these walls. Behind me you can see there's one already, but it's going to look better and better every time now. So we've put one threaded bar through already there at the more forwards. Here in the engine room we've got 2 more locations which we couldn't access before because the engine was here. So now, just to be sure, we can add 2 more 5/8 of an inch threaded bars through the floor timber down to the keel holding this together, and one there as well. I don't know if you guys recognize where I am sitting right now. It is the inside of Yabá, which is completely been stripped down, and now we can really see why we chose to strip it all down. It is a huge interior. Now we believe we can make it a lot well, we can make it more space efficient. And that's why we want to start from scratch. We've kept a lot of the old wood from the wardrobes, cupboards, floor, beams, plywood even, and we can try and use it to rebuild. But it's tough to rebuild keeping the old structure, thinking, but we can keep that beam there even though there's not going to be a bulkhead, but then it's just going to be in the way of accessing ballast. So we decided to take it all off, and we're going to start from scratch with plans from Bruna, our friend, who's helped us out loads with the interior, and we really believe that this interior is going to be great. So I can tell you something already. Of course, up there not much is going to change. Maybe the pilot house, we might have just a slightly little different layout, but inside we're going to divide it in. Sleeping space and washing here at the bow. Middle will be more like storage and maybe a little workshop, and aft, well actually by the mast, it will be more like living, like kitchen, or sorry, galley and a table and all that. So that will be more living, so we really want to divide it. That also helps us a lot with the electrics, not needing many appliances here at the bow, keeping the heavy electric wiring at the back, at the stern. So that's our plan. So I don't know what you guys think. This place looks massive. Also, under the deck, we can't really use it much because I think the floor is going to be just above these columns where they start. Of course, you can't really stand here by the deck because it's just too low, but that is amazing potential for storage area and wardrobes and cupboards and whatnot. So that's what that's going to be used for. Everything away from the deck is going to be used for standing, walking, sitting, whatnot, you know. So I am curious to see how this is going to look, even though we've seen it on plan before and we have ideas. It's of course going to be a big difference when it's actually being made.
Não tinha nada aqui aguentando não, né?
Só o peso dele, né?
Só o peso dele.
Ele dele aí, ó, amarrado lá em cima do...
Sorte. Ei, nós mexemos nele tudo e ele não mexeu aí.
So while we're at this is something we were going to do later on as well, but as we're already at it, we're going to look at replacing the mast foot, or like the support to hold the mast in place, because as you can see, it is completely chocolate cake, rotten. So I don't know if it was just a bad piece of wood. We know we had some water infiltration coming from the deck, so it might have just caused this to rot faster. But maybe also it's got cracks here already, so it might have had some small stress fractures in already. Spider here. And that it just got worse and worse because that's where the water collects. Either way, we're going to find a nice piece of timber. It can be even bigger. We're going to make it stronger. We will have to do two halves as we're not removing the mast, and we'll have to fasten those two halves together and fill up any gaps with a solid, or I don't know, we'll find something. And we need to make sure this is nice and strong because this is what's holding the mast in place. So that's going to be one of our next steps, as well as doing the flooring of the house.
Para o Brasil, rapaz?
Toda a vida foi.
Nunca?
É, alguns pegam aqui, ó, bem, ó, não foi, não tinha. lá dentro. Ó, ladrão aí, ó.
So now this mast foot is in place. It's something that happened unplanned because we were waiting for the other planks to dry. And actually the wood that we used for it was made out of some scrap wood that was left over from a previous job. It did have some sapwood on, I don't know if you saw, on the edges, which doesn't really matter in this case. It would just be a shame to not use this wood just because it's such a big piece. So that's in place now. Oh yeah, and as the sapwood's on the outside, it's never going to cause a problem for structure. On the previous support on the mast foot, there was a little crack on the inside, and that's why it kind of opened up, but this should be fine. The boat's being cleaned. We've put a base layer of paint down, primer, and now we're going to start working on the floor beams, or at least the side and middle supports to put the floor beams on, because we're still waiting for some other wood to arrive for the deck and these cabezos. So why would we the dog's digging something now, why would we stop working if we can keep doing that? And also all the wood that you've just seen on the mast foot, and also the ones that we're going to use now, are all ones that came from that pile of wood over there. It was going to be scrap, well, it was never going to be scrap, but it was there to use if we could. And now the time comes when we can actually use all of that, so that's going to be very cool. We'll see how this goes. There'll be a lot of time lapse because it's going to be a lot of moving and shifting and cutting, and then in the long run you might just see the full project. You will see the full project, but I'm curious to see how we're going to see this one now.
Fica perto ali. Aqui com 4, aí. Dois madeirão. Aí, aí o madeirão. Não, é bom.
Porque tu não leva um prego desse. Se levasse um prego desse, eu ia ver se era bom. Prego desse, eu ia ver.
Cada um leva o que gosta, né? Todos.
Se levasse um prego desse, eu ia ver. Eu ia ver que era bom.
Não, mas tinha? Tem comida? Não. Muito bem, vem. Desce de um parede. Desce de um parede. É isso que eu queria. Vai encostar no pai.
Vai, Zeca.
Vai lá, então.
Vai, Zeca. Bota em caixa lá, Zeca.
So all of these have been placed now, they're in the right place, they've been cut at the right angles. Now we've just removed them so we can put a little primer where it's wood on wood again, and then we can start putting them back in place and fastening to the boat. Now we want to fasten them with screws so we can still be able to remove them later, and not with nails, because we all know from the previous build, I know nails can be stronger and hold longer, but it's just such a hassle to remove any piece nailed onto the boat. So that's what we're going to do. They are nice and strong, so it'll hold. as we are going to keep the old roof beams in the boat, we are going to have to clean them up a bit, which means sanding all the old glue off it and take all the old nails out. And I don't know if you've noticed, there's lots of holes that go through those beams from where wiring used to go through, and we are not going to have the wiring go through those same holes anymore. So Zeka's over here preparing some kind of tree nails, so some little round little pegs that are going to go and fill those holes so that we can sand over them and they'll look nice and smooth. Welcome new patrons and thank you for the PayPal donations. Alert,
Patron,
Andy,
Lord Cepheus,
M,
Tulovas,
David,
Gerald,
Dan, Interlochen Music Company,
Jonathan,
Bill,
and Bruce.
Smile,
Thank you so much.
let him go, let him be free.